Hey everyone, a while back, one of my more interesting thrift store finds were these 8 official Xbox Magazine demo discs. So today, I thought it would be interesting to go over one of them and see what's on here. Personally, I never had an original Xbox growing up, and I didn't even know Xbox Magazine was a thing. So this is going to be my first experience with one of these demo discs. Issue number 23, originally from October 2003, this demo disc has Voodoo Vince on the cover and states that there are 6 playable demos, including Metal Arms and Dino Crisis 3. On the back, we can see the entire list of playable demos, that there's a video showcase, features, and a download center. It looks like there's a good amount of stuff on here, so let's check it out. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit the thumbs up, and please don't forget to subscribe if you're new here. So let's get started. Right away, we're treated to a relatively good menu with the trailer already playing on the main page, and going between the different sections, the menu has a pretty smooth transition. I think it works really well. In my mind, the demos are going to be the main attraction here, so let's start off there. At the top, we have Dino Crisis 3. Upon loading in, we're treated to a decently long cutscene to help familiarize ourselves with the type of game this might be. Once I was in the game, I took control of the main character, and within a minute, there was a ton of mutated space dinosaurs that I needed to take out. While that's great and is a good first step to having fun, the camera system just completely ruins it. It basically does snap jumps to a different point of view, which then made me instinctually adjust the direction I was going, and countless times I would end up going back exactly where I came from. It was extremely frustrating, and I spent more time worrying about the camera than I did about the enemies. The gunplay and jumping mechanics were fine, but the camera system kept me from wanting to keep playing the demo any longer than I needed to. Next up is ESPN NHL Hockey, and as a sports fan, especially a hockey fan, I was pretty interested in trying it out. The game looks fairly decent, played pretty smooth, and it was actually pretty fast paced, which is key to a good hockey game. Trying to go back to that old style of controls though definitely felt out of place for me, but seeing some of the players' names was a nice blast from the past. Considering it's a demo though, the game only allows you to play one period of hockey before sending you out to the main menu. I'm not entirely surprised, but it was a bit of a letdown. However, it was nice that the demo didn't limit the available teams, allowing you to try playing as your favorite team. The third game on the list is Metal Arms, and honestly, I had no idea what this game was before this, so in that sense, the demo just did its job, just 20 years too late for me. But it turns out the game seems to be a third-person robot shooter. Right away in the demo, I was greeted by a bunch of enemies to destroy. As you can tell, I was definitely not very good at it, but the game seems fine. The strafing mechanic worked, but the shakiness of the camera during explosions made it really difficult to tell if I was hitting the enemies or not. For the short time playing, there were multiple weapons to try and different enemy types, but the game was definitely of its time. There was some color to it, but the demo was mostly pretty dark. It had decent background music and good weapon sound effects, although very little of the demo really stood out to me. Up next is Midtown Madness 3, and this was hilariously fun. Driving around Paris, crashing into things, and just going for a reckless drive was extremely entertaining. There was also a decent amount of settings to this demo, as you can adjust the traffic density, the weather, and a few other options. First off, I just tried the mode where I could drive around wherever I wanted in order to get a feel for the controls, and within minutes, I was causing damage and just seeing how everything worked. From noticing that certain trees or pedestrians had no hit detection, realizing the car could take damage, to trying out some off-roading, it really took me back to how I used to just drive around GTA 3 for hours and accomplishing absolutely nothing. From going to the Eiffel Tower to trying to drive off a ledge just to see what would happen, this demo definitely put a smile on my face. Now, the demo only had 2 cars to choose from, a Beetle and an ambulance. So, I had to try out an ambulance race. And if driving around Paris, racing around 5 other ambulances isn't fun, then I don't know what is. I know I might be the odd one out when it comes to this, but in my mind, the less realistic the racing game, the more fun I tend to have. I gotta say, I feel like that's a tough demo to follow, but up next is one of the craziest games I've ever tried. Outlaw Volleyball absolutely did not take itself seriously, and in my mind, this game is absolutely one of the reasons why this disc shows a mature rating. This intro montage is the very first thing you see after the initial loading screen, and fair warning, there's over-the-top stereotypes incoming, so if you don't want to see it, you can skip to the next game. If not, let's proceed. If you think character names like Dojo or zooming directly into a female character's backside is a bit too much, then this game definitely isn't for you. The crazy thing is, even with all the stereotypes of personality traits, names, and voice acting, the volleyball aspect is actually pretty good. The AI enemies and teammates were good. They made plays, didn't look like they were messing up or anything of that nature. This game and its overall personality is definitely a product of its time. It's a shame they probably felt like they needed these over-the-top characters to sell the game to a mass audience, because, from the demo at least, the gameplay is great. Now, I personally am not overwhelmingly bothered by these characters. I can look past them and put them out of my mind the moment I stop playing. But I also know not everyone is capable of doing that, and if that's the case for you, then I definitely suggest skipping this game. Clearly, this game had a very specific target audience, and I just don't think that target audience really exists in this day and age. And finally, the last playable demo, the main focus on the cover, Voodoo Vince. Honestly, I had no idea who or what Voodoo Vince was, but it seems to be a 3D platformer with enemies to take out and collectibles to find. Now, the crazy thing is, I feel like they try to make it a bit more teenage or adult friendly instead of kid friendly, which is not what I was expecting from a 3D platformer. With some of the specialty kills and just the overall color palette, the game felt darker than I assumed it would be. While the gameplay was relatively smooth and the animations looked decent, I just think they missed out on the target audience. I don't remember a ton of kids playing on an Xbox, the player base who might want a 3D platformer. And I don't remember a lot of adults who were into Halo Combat Evolved to, care about a 3D platformer. There's a reason why characters like Spyro and Mario have lasted the test of time. They aimed at the right audience. It's a shame because this could be a good game, and looking at old reviews for it, it's not like it was hated or anything, but it was just never able to catch on. And that does it for the playable demos, but there's still more to this disc. There's quite a good amount of teasers and trailers for upcoming games during that time frame. Going back and seeing some of these can be an interesting experience. Seeing how the games were presented to people for the first time and comparing them to how they actually released can be rather fascinating. So, first up, we have the features, starting with Dead or Alive Online. This trailer is pretty good, straight to the point. It shows off multiple characters, multiple locations, that there's different weather and breakable stages. While it doesn't go into any detail about how the online works, it definitely makes the viewer understand the type of fighting game it is. Followed by Full Spectrum Warrior, and this video tries to show off the realism of the game. While I don't think this makes the game look very good as it uses really dulled out colors, it does try to show off the intensity that the game looks to bring out. But what it doesn't do is really show the viewer just how the gameplay is going to look. I couldn't tell if it was going to be a first or third person shooter, so I looked it up, and it's apparently a 3D real-time tactics game, which I definitely did not get from this video. Next is Hunter the Reckoning Redeemer. This video has a ton of action in it, as well as a narrator, so between those two aspects of the video, it really helps the viewer understand exactly the type of game it is, and I think that's extra important to make sure someone who didn't play the first game can easily understand what's happening. And if that wasn't enough, there's even some quick interview segments with developers to go a bit more in depth. I think this video did a pretty good job considering what it needed to do. It showed off a bunch of characters, enemies, and weapons while showing off the gameplay style, and it worked for me. Next is Robin Hood Defender of the Crown, and while I think a Robin Hood game can be interesting, I think this video package does a bit of a disservice. With no narrator or gameplay sounds, just background music, everything is left to the gameplay to hook the viewer, and during every single sword fighting sequence, the exact same combo is used, which leads me to believe there's very little in terms of variety within the gameplay. While the graphics look decent, and there are some other sections with bow and arrows or jousting, the sword combat looks way too repetitive and dull. I think they should have just shown other combos, or just less sword combat to keep the viewer from noticing just how repetitive it is. And to end the features section is a montage of sports games. It actually surprised me just how many sports titles they were advertising, as there were multiple different football, basketball, hockey, and golf games. If you wanted realistic or over the top, they were all advertised here. There was no game that got any sort of in-depth look, so there were times when I couldn't tell if a repeat sport was actually a different game or not. Sports games have always sold well, so they must have just realized they didn't really need to focus on them. After the features section is the video showcase portion of the disc, and honestly, I'm not entirely sure what the difference is. At first, I thought one section was for already released games and the other for upcoming games, but there were release dates in both sections. Then I thought maybe one section was for Xbox exclusives, but there were multi-platform games in both sections, so honestly, I just never figured it out. But the video showcase starts off with a pretty big trailer for Fable. It does a rather quick and simple explanation about the backstory of the game, and it implies you can choose how your character will end up, but it doesn't go into very much detail. It does a decent job of showing off the graphics with the colors and lighting, but the focus is on quick snapshots of combat, really putting forth that it's an action-adventure game. Next is Gladiator Sword of Vengeance. This trailer is pretty short. It does give a bit of backstory, but I think the grand scale of fighting in the arena with a cheering crowd was the focal point. It does show off a little bit of the combat, which actually looks rather fast-paced, which was surprising to me, and it also showed off a ton of blood being spilled on the ground. It definitely made it look like it was meant for a more mature audience. Third, we have Magic: The Gathering Battlegrounds, and this video got right to the point. Different monsters and creatures attacking each other with spells and abilities. Pure action with basically nothing else. It was a little fast-paced with a ton of cuts, which actually made it a little difficult to see just how the combat was going to be. But it seems like they wanted to focus on showing off a bunch of different attacks and characters. And if that's the case, then mission accomplished. There wasn't a ton of variety in the video, so there's not a lot to say about it honestly. Next up is Roadkill, and this looks like Xbox's version of Twisted Metal, and honestly, looked pretty fun. Over-the-top car-based combat. To me, that's a good starting point for a fun game. The video shows off a ton of action and gives a lot of detail on screen with the different modes the players can expect to have. I think it's a really effective video for a demo disc as it leaves the viewer knowing exactly what the game is about and how it's going to play. Next, we have Sudeki, which is a game I had never heard of before. It looks to be an action game with up to 4 playable characters, a warrior, a huntress, a scientist, and a sorceress, where they all need to heal a rift between 2 realms. It's a good thing there was a narrator, because honestly, I don't think I would have had any idea what was happening otherwise. Some of the graphics in this video game looked a little blurry, but it did have some good use of color where a lot of games of this era just kept things dark and bland. And finally, to end the video showcase section, we have 13. This game looks totally different than a lot of the other action-adventure games we've seen on this demo disc, and I think it helps make it stand out. The video does a decent job of explaining that the main character lost his memory, and before he can piece everything back together, his past is already catching up to him. And while the video does a great job of showcasing the visual style of the game, it does a terrible job of showing off how the gameplay is going to look. I had to look it up, and apparently it's a first-person shooter, which I definitely did not get from this video. I thought it would be some sort of point-and-click mystery game, kind of set in a comic book frame world like Comic Zone or something like that, but I was completely wrong. I just feel like this gave no indication that it would be a first-person shooter. Now, between the 2 sections, that's 11 trailers for games on the disc, which is a really good way for a subscriber to the magazine to learn about new games, especially since it was a monthly service, but some of the trailers didn't exactly put each game's best foot forward. Aside from the playable demos and the trailers, there was also downloadable content on the disc, with things for games like Splinter Cell and Time Splitters 2, which is a really cool feature. The issue is, nothing would happen. I would click copy, but I couldn't figure out how to open them. I went into my Xbox memory and I couldn't find any save files. I tried hitting copy for Splinter Cell and then putting my copy of Splinter Cells into the system, and nothing. I'm just not sure how this section was supposed to work. It seems like a cool idea though, if it would work. Please, someone who has made use of this before, let me know exactly what I was supposed to do. And finally, the last section of the demo disc is a quick credits section for all the people who worked on the disc. So in the end, there were 6 playable demos, 11 trailers, and a download section that didn't seem to do anything for me. But it still could be 17 games for the player to learn about, which isn't bad. That's a decent number of games to get eyes on when you're looking for something new to pick up. Personally, I never really had any demo discs growing up that I can remember. I feel like I remember as a kid I would get frustrated that they were just small sections of a game, but now as an adult I can appreciate the concept of them. Demo discs were definitely a product of their time, but they offer a cool glimpse into the past and offer a lot of people a ton of nostalgia. When I found this disc at the thrift store a while back, I actually picked up 7 others with it. So if you want to see more content like this, be sure to hit the thumbs up and let me know down in the comments. And be sure to let me know if you were big on demo discs and what game you played the first level of over and over and over again. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe for more video game related content. If you're feeling nostalgic for another Microsoft product, then be sure to check out my video right here, revisiting the Xbox 360.